Welcome to the Lazy Money Machine, where we show you the easy, no-nonsense way to financial and time freedom. Here are your hosts, Graham Brown and Erik Graham.
Welcome, Graham. How's things?
I am fantastic. How you doing, Erik?
Very good. As you can see, I just threw half a bottle of water over myself. So
it's snowing here in Japan, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
It's
Did you
hot
believe
here.
that? It's snowing.
Yeah.
Snowing. It's the middle of March. But I'm heading out. I'm got 2 more weeks in Japan, Erik, and then I'm heading to China, and then I'm heading to Hong Kong, and then I'm heading to Thailand.
Yeah.
So I might never see snow again.
That's right. The big immigration is the Lazy Money Machine chief is moving his assets to another place in the world.
Moving my ass.
And that too, yeah.
My assets ain't moving anywhere.
But yeah, it's a big move. So Graham is moving his whole family to Thailand, which I'm very excited about because it's closer by, less time
We'll be
difference.
neighbours, man. How a flight from Phuket to Jakarta? It must be about 3 hours, no, 2 hours.
To Thailand, yeah, it's less. I think it's like 2.5 hours. Yeah, and Air Asia flies. It's very cheap, very easy
Right,
to do.
direct. Awesome.
So yeah,
I love
And,
Jakarta as well, man. So be down there.
yeah, and I've studied your Asia Tech podcast material, and Thailand is definitely closer to the not maybe closer to the heat, but it's definitely also one of the hubs of the startup scene in Asia. Indonesia definitely is, and then China is probably the other one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I live in Tokyo, and it's sort of a bit sedentary by comparison.
Right.
It's quite, it's a massive. And Tokyo's the biggest city in the world, like 40 million people. But in terms of startup activity and hustle, I don't know. It's just not there.
No.
I've got to get back to it. I've got to get back to the hustle, Erik.
Same.
It's where I belong.
Same here. So that's very good. I mean, and it's part of what we're talking about in the Lazy Money Machine tribe as well, and in the group, right? Choosing where you want to live in the world is an important thing you have or you can do if you have the freedom to do so. And to create that freedom, you need to have some form of income. Obviously, as we always talk about, but you're really doing it, and you're even more into that than I am. I'm more stuck in Indonesia for my commitments here. But you're regularly moving your family to another place in the world, which is
Regularly.
very exciting.
Sounds reckless. Hey, you know what? I don't think I've shared this with anybody, but I had, before we first left in 2012, for about a year, I created this spreadsheet, which was, I'm sure it must be valuable, and it must be somewhere, which is like how to choose the best place in the world to live spreadsheet.
Okay.
And I've got to dig it out, because I'm sure if I put this as an app somewhere online, it'd be worth something.
Right.
Is that it had like on, every single different index across the top that you could have, everything from weather to cost of living to crime and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
There must have been about 100 indicators, and then down the other side you had about 200 cities. I did every city in the world I could think of, all serious contenders. And then you put all the numbers in, and at the end of it, it produces like a ranking. So, yeah, I mean, I should dig that out again and see if it actually made any sense.
Share it with the group, maybe. I mean, that's interesting content. That's interesting content for anybody considering to live anywhere else in the world. So.
Right. But I think it's important as well, because you could sort of choose which indicators are important to you.
Right.
Whereas, there's a lot of these, like, best places to live in the world type articles you see online. Sometimes there's a lot of surveys, isn't there, like done by, Mercer, the drug company does, pharmaceutical company does one.
Right.
And they're based in Switzerland. And it's funny because when they do it, their sort of top city is always like Zurich or something like that. Zurich's the best city. Then it's Frankfurt. So they always have like, it's Swiss, then German, and then it's sort of North European cities.
But there's a difference, I think, for entrepreneur, investor type of people like us, and for people that are actually wanting to work as well. Because, work life, for instance, in the States is very stressful, and you're expected to work long hours. In China, same thing. And if you would go to a country like Sweden or Denmark, your work week is 29.5 hours or something like that, right? So
exactly. Yeah,
but
exactly.
if you're an entrepreneur, you want fast internet, you want access to maybe people with money, people you can work with, other entrepreneurs, right? So that also determines your satisfaction of moving to a certain country, I think.
Exactly. There's another factor as well. I mean, these surveys often, they rank the best cities in the world to live in. Usually you get cities like Auckland or Vancouver at the top, right? But, they're always sort of aimed at like expat families. Like you say, it's always aimed at, salaried professionals. So maybe that makes sense for them. But what they never seem to take into account in these surveys is the weather, right? Because it does have a big bearing on your experience, I'm sure. If you lived in Vancouver or Auckland, it rains like 360 days a year, right? And so they never factor in. It's always sort of based on, lifestyle things like salary or school fees or those kind of things. It's never sort of like the soft stuff, which I think is probably the most important. And especially as an entrepreneur, you get more access to that, right? And you think more about that stuff.
Yeah, about the weather, I don't think you realize how much impact it has on your mood until you live in a country where it's always sunny.
Right.
Which is where I am, right? I mean, it's...
always.
Well, I mean, it rains every once in a while.
Even at night.
It's like 90% of the year or 95% of the year. It's at least it's warm, it's sunny, and there's a lot of.
What is Jakarta? What's the minimum temperature you ever get down to? Like in the middle of the night or 2 a.m. on the coldest day of the coldest month of the year.
Jakarta has a big problem, of course, because there's so much concrete being developed here that the heat is being retained, right? It's not like Singapore. It is much more windy and closer to the sea. So where I am, probably at night, normally we go down to maybe coldest, maybe 24 degrees.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we have air conditioning, right? You can't sleep nicely unless you run the air conditioning. But it does. I mean, it does have an impact if you wake up in the morning and it's sunny and it sets your mood. It makes a big difference, and I don't think I would want to go back to a country where it's bad weather for most of the time, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the UK, so, I can't really argue with you. I think as well, I mean, I lived in the Canary Islands for some time, and I lived in Okinawa.
Yes. And
Okinawa is not, I mean, it's hot, it's subtropical, but it's not so sunny. It's a lot cloudy a lot of the time, but the Canary Islands is like sunny every day.
Right.
I think it's like 3,000 sunshine hours a year, which is like an average of, 8 or 9 a day. So it does make a difference. And I think the big difference is, Eric, is that, when you live in the UK, for example, here's an example. Let's say I said, hey, Eric, let's your family and my family get together and have a barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it on, Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
It's like on the Saturday, you're constantly checking the weather forecast because you have a window of weather and it's just complete crapshoot whether or not that day is going to come off. But like you live somewhere like the Canary Islands or maybe in Jakarta or where I'm going, Thailand, it's like, for a fact it's going to be pretty damn good weather. So I don't know, it takes a lot of the stress out of it. Like the things you don't need to be worried about are gone.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay,
the weather. Are we talking about the weather?
No, let's not do that. Let's not get British or Dutch. It's a standard conversation opener, right? The weather's so bad today. The weather's so bad. In those two countries, it's really it's the main topic of the day usually. But here it's not because it's always the same.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing to talk about. It's just hot. There you go. But I like that. I mean, okay, look, I don't want to talk too much about the weather, but I just want to say one more thing if I can. Am I allowed about the weather?
Go for it.
Is that here's one thing, because we talk. I mean, when we opened, we talked about that subject of one of the best things about being an entrepreneur and having passive income is you can go and choose anywhere to live in the world, right? And when I moved out of the UK and first moved to the Canary Islands and then to Asia, is a lot of people said to me that you'd miss the seasons. You'd miss that sort of rhythm that that life has. Like. Boy, did I not miss the seasons when I left England. It's like, I can tell you, when people tell you that, it's bullshit. You will not miss the seasons. You will not miss wrapping up in the cold or waking up and being cold or scratching ice off your car. You don't miss any of that.
What I do miss is the winter sports and things like that that you can do when the seasons are happening, right? That's like an event, right? That's a small little holiday or something that you're taking doing that.
Yeah. Well, you can choose to do that. You don't want. I mean, if you want winter sports, you have to also be de-icing your car every morning with a kettle. Exactly. Take your choice.
Pick your choice. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So let's put the weather aside, Erik.
Let's put it aside.
We do like to talk about the weather, but we're talking about bigger matters here. We said every week we're sort of talking about something that was really big that made an impression upon us either in the news or in our experience, or just a story we wanted to share with the Lazy Money tribe.
Right.
And I found this. There was this article. Shall I do the screen share?
Yeah,
so
go for it.
All right, let's do the screen share. So if you're watching this on the video, you can watch along. But if you're listening on the podcast, you just have to listen to our descriptions of it. All right. So here we go. I'm hoping this is working. So basically, there's an article. You see it?
Yeah, I'll put you full screen, so I'll take me out. There you go. Now everybody can see it.
Right, so there's this article
in the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah, it's not like I read Harvard Business Review regularly, but I just kind of, if I pick it up on my feeds, I'll read it. So there was an article in Harvard Business Review, and it basically says to control your life, control what you pay attention to, right?
Right.
And there is a psychology of attention. So, a lot scientists have studied the brain, and attention exists. It's not something we make up. The human brain has, basically geared towards attention. So, right. There's so much information going on at this time that we can't focus on every single piece of it. So the human brain has to sort of decipher it, right? So it's focus will understand, but let me just talk a little bit about this. So if you can't actually see this picture, let me describe. Basically what this is that you're looking at this image. It could be an image, it could be a face, it could be words on a page. But actually what's happening is you're not looking at the whole image. You just look at a little part in the middle, and your brain makes up the rest. Right. So what the brain does is it sort of fills in the gaps, and it's very good at filling the gaps. So if I look at your picture now, Erik, I look at this picture of Erik, but actually, I'm not focusing on the complete scene. I didn't see the fact that there's this huge spider right behind your head.
Over there behind me, yeah.
Yeah, that one. That's his pet. So stuff like that, you don't focus on this. You just focus on what you want to focus on, right? So there is a psychology of attention. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because this is really important to us, right, as entrepreneurs. Think about how this could be important. So a lot of shit happens on a regular basis, right? And how we choose to focus our attention changes our outcomes, right? And this is called attention management. And before I get into this, before we talk a little bit about this, but just let's think about this, Erik. When stuff happens to you, and being an entrepreneur, stuff happens all the time. It's guaranteed, right? How do we, let's think about how we can choose to attend to that in different ways, right? So let's go back and think about some shit that's happened in our lives, some business where stuff went wrong. Do you want to share a story, or shall I do it?
Well, you can start. I mean, I have many stories where things went wrong. Even
how long have we got?
even recently, but let me contemplate a little bit, because I think it is fascinating. So if you can share your story first, I'll go next.
All right. So I remember when I left I had I had a business for many years with a partner, and it sort of came to not a great ending. Where we sort of, we kind of, I guess we grew out of it. So we decided to do our own things, and we came to a financial arrangement which was beneficial to both of us. But, when I left and then we decided to go and travel the world, I realized actually when we were traveling the world was very expensive, right? So my financial situation back sort of 6 or 7 years ago was that, we were spending a lot more money than we were making passive income wise when we were traveling, because we were flying all over the place. Like we're going to Hawaii and Fiji and stuff like that. We weren't going to like Chiang Mai in Thailand for $20 a month, right? We're going to these quite amazing places. And it was really stressful. So again, attention management was, what do I spend my time on? And I could have spent my time thinking about, look, my bank balance is going down by, let's say, $2,000 a month, right? Which is, it's not a big deal, but the fact that it's going down is a big deal because eventually it will run out.
Yes.
It could run out in 100 years, but the fact is because it's constantly going down, you're conscious of it, you're aware of it, right?
Right.
So I had to sort of reprogram myself and think, look, work out how long you have left to get, like if you didn't make any more money at this time, right? If for whatever reason you didn't make a single dime more, a single penny, how long would you have left? And I thought, okay, well, I have more money to outlast my lifetime, right? At this rate. So, and then ask myself, would I be able to make money in that time? Could I make money in the next 10 years, 20 years? Oh, I certainly could, right?
Yeah. Just to quickly interrupt you, can you stop sharing your screen and come back in the picture again?
Right.
Let's see if we can get that to work. There we are.
There
okay,
you go.
Go for it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was it. That's just an example of selective attention because I think, it was really wearing me down thinking about my bank balance going down. Right. Even though it was a massive amount, it was really bugging me. Because then I'd say to the family, oh, we can't do that. We can't stay at that hotel. I started to become you become really defensive.
Right. And so what was your thinking again? Can you rephrase that again? So you realized that you were depleting your reserves because you were traveling and you were not making as much as you were spending. Yeah. And then you did the calculation, okay, if I keep going at this rate, when will I run out? And
yes.
Would I be able to generate something again before I run out that replaces it? That's sort of your thinking process, right?
Right. So, even if that, let's say I was on a really tight schedule, or death clock, so to speak. Let's say I only had 3 years of money left.
Right.
Then I could say, could I make money in 3 years? As an entrepreneur, I should pretty well be able to do that.
Right.
So that's the exercise. You look at that and think, okay, look, this is the absolute worst case scenario. Let's work back from that. Mm-hmm. Rather than focusing on the month by month loss, the reduction in your bank account, go all the way back to scale it right back to the worst case scenario and then work back and say, okay, if this is the worst case scenario, how much time do I have?
Right, but would you also include in that you want to stop working at some point? So, if most of us entrepreneurs have no pension unless you set it up through your company and you're creating a pension fund of some sort. So, most of our future income needs to come from what we have today in some way, right? So do you think about that as well? You can say, look, I've got 200,000, 300,000, $1 million in the bank. That takes me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Right.
But then I have nothing, right? So am I actually at that point still able to generate value and money?
Well, I had a property portfolio, so that was my pension, so to speak.
Right.
So if I got it to the stage where I ran out of money, mm-hmm. I could always sell some of that off mm-hmm. if I had to. Mm-hmm. But it still generates income. But yeah, even if that was the case, even if I didn't have that, I could still, it's just sort of work out the time, focus. That's what it was about. Focus on what time I had and whether or not I could make money in that rather than sort of that constant drip, 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 drip. Which I think is you then once you become motivated by the fear of loss, I don't think you can make money very well. I think it's really hard because you start looking at how can I save money?
How can I reduce my spendings?
Exactly. And to be an entrepreneur, you've got to take a few risks. That's really hard because, I think it was a big cause of stress for me and my family as well. So that's my story.
In my current situation, I'm even, it applies to me in some extent. I think it I can relate to that very well. And I think the other thing that I have noticed is that if disaster happens in your life, outside of your control, which I've had happening last year. I had a large investment in a large investment fund, and the fund manager turned out to be a criminal and a crook, and basically ran away with the cash. I pretty early on had decided, okay, that's a write-off, that's gone, and not try to focus on the pain it is causing that went wrong. Because it's completely out of my control. It's very unlikely that anything is going to be recovered. The guy is on the move. He's hunted by Interpol. It's that bad, right? It's really
serious.
It's really seriously wrong, right? Company closed, website closed, nobody there. Police raids. His home is raided and everything. So it's a really, really serious problem. So if it's that bad, it's very unlikely I'm going to see any of that back. So let's assume that's gone. And I've put in my claim. I've joined a criminal claim that's against this company and against the person in question. And I'm just going to leave it at that, right? I'll wait for the news. I can get frustrated over it. It will bring me pain and frustration and depression, and it doesn't make any sense. So, for me, also the opposite thing of I think the main thing that I had to learn over the years is that not to focus on the loss and not to focus on the bad things that happen. Because bad things keep happening. And like anybody else, I get upset if something bad happens. Happens regularly. I can still get upset, but I try to train myself to drop it on the side and try to focus on what can I do about this, right? What can I do to influence the situation? And the big handicap I have is that I look quite far ahead, so I can analyze trends in my financial situation or where things are going, and I can foresee that this could become a problem in 3 years. And I usually then start to think, okay, like now, exactly the situation I'm in right now, what can I do about this now so that I don't end up running out of money in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, right? Which I think is positive. I think that's, as long as you keep your energy focused on how to solve things, how to fix things, how to make things better, I think then you're on the right path, instead of dwelling in the problems.
In a way, like with that rogue fund manager, you kind of just, it's similar. Like what I was thinking about with my situation is like you've got to kind of write it off and then work backwards, haven't you? So anything you get from the fund manager now is a bonus, isn't it?
Yes.
You're not hanging on to the fact, well, I might get 100K out of this guy.
Yeah.
You're hanging on to the fact that you're going to hit nothing, and then you sort of work backwards on it. That's really important, isn't it? Because now you're sort of, it allows you to move on. I think this is the key with attention, isn't it? Is that, it takes a lot of space in your head, things like this, especially when you talk about money.
Yeah, and I have another smaller example. Remember the investment proposal I discussed in a previous episode? So basically what happened there was I've been quite active in approaching people, and I've had some really positive responses from some people. And last week I found out that there's a feud between the heirs of that land. So apparently the land belongs to, we knew that, the land belongs to more than one person. And there's a big this debate between where the money goes after the thing is sold.
Right.
So first thing I did was go to my investors saying this is the situation, and there might be a delay, because I think this thing could still come around pretty quickly, but it might take a bit longer. And in the meantime, okay, now I need to focus on finding new deals, right? So basically that's what I tell everybody. Instead of worrying about the fact that this one deal fell through, I'm just going to go and say, look, thank you for your commitment. I'm really sorry this thing fell through. It's outside my control. I'll keep working, keep looking at new deals for you.
Yeah, a lot of that's being honest, isn't it, with yourself and with your investors as well. And I think if your investors, well, they're not your investors, are they? They didn't invest in the deal, or they hadn't. You hadn't taken their money and sunk it into a project. These are people who are willing to invest, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, if you have the right people, then that's fine, isn't it? Because they'll understand that happens.
Right.
And that's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
I had whilst we're at it, let me share another story. Let's get it all out, Erik.
Go for it.
I had a business project where I went into business with a partner in a very informal arrangement. You know where I'm going with this, but obviously I will not name any names.
Right.
Nothing to do with Erik, by the way, because he's a solid chap. But the other situation I had was it didn't work out. This is the thing, business relationships don't work out sometimes. Sometimes they don't work out within a matter of months, and sometimes it takes years and years. But you don't necessarily have a business partnership until you die, right, with that person. Yes. Sometimes that's natural. Didn't work out. Was a lot of stress, really, because it was just kind of it wasn't the best sort of way to end a business partnership, and it's a real shame, but that's just how it happened, and for a number of reasons which I won't discuss. But it happened, and it left us with a strange situation where we didn't have a clean break in the ownership of the assets and so on.
Right.
But, it's my mistake that it didn't have everything. And we're optimists. That's the problem with being an entrepreneur. We're optimists. Sometimes we think things are going to work out, but they don't always work out, do they?
Yeah.
That's our problem, I think. And so I got into a stage. I went through this, right? Obviously, it was quite stressful, and then I sort of took things on myself to get on with my own thing.
Yeah.
But during this time, I was constantly sort of checking, like, what he was doing. And like even in my notes, and you know how I organize my priority, like my work stack type thing.
Yep.
I have like a system with all these sort of notes, and they sort of float to the top, and when they're done, they go to the bottom. And one of my and I'll call this guy Bob just for argument's sake. One of these notes was like, "How do I beat Bob?"
Right.
Seriously, it was on my note. Right, I'm being quite honest with this, and so it was like. No, because I thought, that's what I had to do. That's what I was focused on. And then I just got to a stage where actually I thought, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Like, just stop thinking about this. Because even if you think this is a good thing to make you more competitive and more successful, it's not, I don't think it's a healthy thing to think about what you're doing in terms of, it's a little bit negative in a way. I'm sort of reacting to somebody else, right?
Yes.
I'm reacting to somebody else rather than doing my own thing. My actions will then be dictated by the actions of somebody else. So that was, a good example of attention management. It took me a while to realize that. And I think I made a mistake. I learned a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. And always, that's sort of maybe the bit holistic view on this, but I think negative energy is like quadruple as effective as positive energy. So if there's something negative, even though it's small, it eats away at your attention and it's nagging. While positive energy is usually it's self-propelling, right? If you get excited about something, you start doing more and more and more and more and more. While negative energy really, with a little bit, can pull you down pretty fast.
Right. Absolutely. What about, negative energy in the people I know we talk a lot about people you hang around with. Because, this is really important to attention, isn't it? Like what they draw your attention to.
Right.
I find, are you aware of that? I find that I know some people. I know because this podcast goes public, so I have to be really careful what I say. And I don't want to be negative about people.
Right.
Right, because they're not here, right? And this is me and my issues, right? Is that I know there's some people that I know in my network for whatever reason, and every time you sort of speak to them, they sort of focus the conversation on something which is like, why the hell are we talking about this? It's like, what happened in the news or something like that, or like. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's some of the things that are important, but there's some things they keep bringing it back to these things, and it's like I don't want to focus my attention on that. So I'm quite conscious of that, and I don't know. I can be a little bit dismissive that way. I think people think that's sort of being a bit rude.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you choose to not be influenced by them, I guess, right? So you're choosing to, you're choosing your response to their negativity in this case, which is leave it, right? Just drop it. it's not going to affect you.
I'll tell you when it was actually. Is that you remember when there was that shooting in Vegas?
Yes.
And that guy got in that hotel and just started shooting people just randomly. That people kept talking about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to know. I mean, I've heard the story and that's it. That's all I want to know. I don't want to keep talking about it because it's like I can't do anything about it. And it's like a really, really negative thing. And I just want to kind of like move on from it and just focus on what I can focus on, right? But some people really want to talk about these things. And it's like, I don't know. It's like a conscious decision in terms of attention management to focus on the positive. Because like you say, negative energy can be really draining.
Yes. And that's why, I mean, we talk about it in the book as well. That's why following the news and being on top of the news is something that has this effect on you, right? It can condition your mind to sort of project the fact that there are there's so many problems in the world. My situation is shit because there's so many problems in the world. Therefore, it's not my fault. Therefore, it justifies where I am in my life, and that's what any negative impact can do to you, right? You can, in any situation, if you attribute the cause of your unhappiness or the cause of your failure to negative things that happen in your life or around you or in the world, you're giving the power away. You're giving the power away to the world and to the news and to the people that do this to you, and you don't keep the power to yourself to do something about it.
Yeah. You have to be conscious.
My little Tony Robbins speech here,
I think you're absolutely right, though, Eric. Okay, Tony. You've done a good job.
Let Tony hear you.
Make you move.
I love Tony Robbins. Tony, if you're listening to this, I love you.
Tony will be listening. He will be angry now. Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's like you sort of talk about what Tony Robbins talks about. I think the key message there is that, you have to, when you talk about these things, I think you have to be when you talk about these things publicly, you have to say it in a way, even if you don't 100% believe it, but when you say it, it reconditions in your own mind that that's the case. Let me try and explain. For example, failed business relationship that I had, as an example. The first few times that I talk about it, I say, that guy is just a dick. He's an idiot, right? And he's probably saying the same thing about me. And but now I've sort of got over it a bit. I deliberately go out and say, look, it was my fault. Like I said earlier, it's my fault because I didn't do X, Y, and Z, right? And I think you have to do that. You have to make a conscious effort to say that,
right?
Because, like you say, it sort of confirms to yourself when you're saying it that actually you were in control of this. Because next time it happens, you will be in control, right?
Yep. It happened with me with the fund. I mean, I made a stupid mistake to invest in a fund that was way too good to be true. I made the good decision to pull my dividends out. So my loss, as you might call it, is literally, it's still significant, but it's not the full amount that I put in. So I made a good I'm quite proud of myself. I did minimize my risk. I screwed up. I lost a lot of money, but okay, that's never going to happen again, right?
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Is it more money? Would that money buy more than a car? Just so people can understand.
Yeah. It would buy a few cars.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. Yes, I know. And that's tough, right? Is that the sort of the first real big loss you've ever sort of taken in business?
Well, I mean, I lost my business, but that was basically the stop. Right. The stop of money coming in. This is basically a significant loss. Yeah, it was one of the big significant losses. Yeah.
People talk about your biggest loss being your biggest teacher.
Right.
I know sometimes you think about that's bullshit. Yeah. I'd much rather have the money. But do you think that was the case? Do you think that you've sort of learned something big out of that?
Oh yeah, for sure. And the stupid thing is I had that rule for myself before I invested in this, which is that I never want to invest in something that I don't have control over, which I did, and boom, there you go, right? a big problem.
Yeah.
So I prefer to keep the money closer to myself and invest them in my own projects. And then if I then screw up, it's now the power is away, right? I've given the power to manage that away to somebody, and he did something bad with it. I should have kept it closer to myself. At least if I would have screwed up with it, it would be really my mistake.
Right. But you did screw up, right?
Definitely.
There you go.
So. But I think that's good. It's a good article actually, and the picture that you showed too with the focus in the middle. I think that's really what it is, right? You need to train yourself to push all the negativity and the unimportant things to the periphery, right? To the outside, to the blur area. They're still there, right? And this business partner of yours, it will still come up. This loss will still come up. The loss of a deal will still come. It still comes up. The loss of my business, every time I talk about it, I get upset over it because it's there in the periphery. It's blur, but it's not my day-to-day focus. I think that's really what it is. It's a good picture. I
want to show you another one, which is just about that article. Can I do a screen share?
Yeah, go for it. As long as you share, you put yourself back after you're done with it. Then.
All right, you have to remind me because I get carried away.
I will.
This is sort of the follow-on from the article. I don't know if you can see it. It's like a NASCAR. Yeah. All right. Now, I actually think this might have been inspired by Tony Robbins. He makes a second appearance tonight.
Okay. So where's the article from, and what does it say?
Well, no, this is the Harvard Business Review article, right?
Yep, that's what we looked at just now, and this is?
This is some leadership, some Jesus Gil Hernandez. I don't know who this guy is, right? But it's just a picture about focus on the road, not the wall. I've been searching for this because I know Tony Robbins talked about this.
Right. This is NASCAR, I think, right? So you see 3 NASCAR cars at full speed on the circuit.
Yeah.
And the one on the right is like millimeters from the wall.
Exactly. And this is important because I've been searching around for it on the internet. Like, where does this come from? Because there's a lot of tales about apocryphal anecdotes about focus on the road, not the wall. And I wanted to know where it came from. I couldn't find the source, but there's a lot of people written about this, so I'll just go with it. And apparently, if you're a racing car driver, you could be NASCAR, you could be Formula One, you're going to be going at speeds of 200 miles, 300 kilometers an hour, and very, very close, as Erik says, to like the concrete wall. And the key here is the focus is that, if you ever have trouble, what they train the drivers to do at a young age is to focus on the road, not the wall. And for example, when they spin off, and they will spin off at some point during their career, when they spin off, they say, like, you're going to be hurtling towards the wall at 200 kilometers an hour and you're going to think, shit, I'm going to die.
Yes.
But they say, like, even at that time, you must focus on the road.
Yes.
Not the wall that you're heading towards, because if you focus on that wall, you're going to hit the wall.
Right.
But if you focus on the road, somehow your brain is going to pull you around and try and get you back on the track, right?
Yeah.
And that's the training they just drill into these young racing car drivers. Focus on the road. I think that's so true, isn't it? We're talking about our challenges, our problems in business, right? We can focus on the wall or the road, and it seems like it's easier to focus on the wall because that's flying towards us at 200 miles an hour, isn't it? And then that becomes a certainty. If you look at the wall and think, shit, it's going to happen. That's our natural reaction. It's our fear, isn't it? That is going to happen. Our fear that this is the inevitable. But the only way out is to focus on the road and the road forward.
Yes. Have you ever done advanced driving courses?
Not officially, just myself. What about yourself?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
I have done it in the Netherlands. Basically, they take you on a circuit, they spray the whole thing soaking wet, and they put 3-4 pylons in the middle of the road, and they basically with an instructor they drive you around, and you don't know when they're going to pull the handbrake. And of course, when the handbrake's pulled, your car will basically lose traction on the rear axle, and it goes everywhere. And the only way to get out of that is you keep looking to where you want to go. So what they train you is you do not look anywhere but where you want to go. It doesn't matter where that is, right? If that is through your left windscreen, that's where you'll be looking. And you keep moving your head around to the direction, depending on what the car is doing, to where you want to go. You keep looking at where you want to go. And then automatically your hands will start steering into that direction. So if you get into a spin, that's what you do. So you
Does it work?
Yes, it works absolutely.
Well, and how many tries does it take to get used to it?
A couple, 3, 4 maybe, then you get the handle of it.
3 or 4 fatal crashes before it
No,
works.
of course not. I mean, you're in a big circuit, nothing will happen. But the same is on the snow. You can practice it on the snow. If you have a big parking lot that's empty and it's snowy or icy, then you can try it. It works exactly the same thing, the same way. And the other place where I've learned this is that I used to fly gliders. And if a glider goes into a stall, which basically means it loses its lift, right. What happens is you fly too slow, the wings don't have enough speed, it doesn't have enough lift. It basically drops, it falls in a stall, and it starts spinning.
No way.
Because the wings lose their lift, and therefore you can't even steer with them anymore. Because they have no lift. So the rudders don't do anything anymore. So that's the training you need to do before you get your glider, your pilot license. And basically, you need to correct that with your feet. So with your feet controls the back rudder of the plane, which goes left and right. And that is the only one that's still effective if the plane is stalling. So it's a very counterintuitive thing that you need to do. But you got to get that thing under control. Once you have it out of the swirling motion, then the wings will start to pick up lift again, and then you can pull it out of the dive. Now, same things are, you need to train that rhythm in your head, so that in that situation you're not looking at the ground going, the ground is coming. Because the ground is coming. You're hanging down and you're spinning. You have no idea where you're going. You just know you stalled the plane. You need to run your pre-trained exercise to get out of that.
Right.
So it's so true, right? And that's what, there's a bit of a different analogy than...
Right. I'm just thinking about it in the context of the glider. The glider's a lot more scary, isn't it? Because it's like you can't really practice it too many times, can you? Yeah,
so basically what happens is the instructor basically stalls the plane, and then they're going hands off, and, we're going down to try to rescue it. Now, the good thing, I have to admit one thing, that the good thing about a glider is those planes naturally try to recover themselves. Because basically you have no engine, so they are built in such a way that if they do go down very steep, they usually recover themselves. So most of the times you don't need it, but there is a particular condition in which it doesn't recover itself, and it keeps spinning, and you need to be able to recover that.
Wow.
And it's.
I would like to be in that situation in a spin, though, because that's when you'd lose sort of all. What is that? When they train you in the military, don't they? You talk about getting in control of that fear.
Right.
They have those sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? They have that, they'll spell out a word, won't they? And F for fire, A for alert, you know what I mean? It's like spelled out. So you're not thinking, you're just sort of going through a drill.
Yes.
Like in a glider. You can't think, can you? You've got to...
You got to execute the automatic procedure that you have been taught.
That's it, yeah, exactly.
But if you would focus on the problem, which is the Earth coming closer, you would not switch your brain to fixing the problem. And you need to go through that situation a few times to realize that this is actually not the end of it, because you can recover from this. But if you do the wrong thing, which is you try to, with your ailerons, you try to balance the plane and try to get out of the spin, then basically you're panicking, ground comes nearer, and you're doing the wrong thing and you're dying, basically. So you need to do something quite counterintuitive, which is you need to use your feet to control the rudder at the back, because that thing is going to get you out of the spin.
Wow. That's awesome.
But that's sort of a different thing. It's about focus, but sometimes also about these routines, right? That
routines.
And maybe in this context, the routine could be that, okay, get yourself good at shifting away negativity, shifting away problems, compartmentalizing them. I know from you in personal conversations we had, you're very good at that. You can, if there's a lot of stress in your life from one point to the other, you can then say, okay, this is now not the time to deal with this. I'm now going to focus on something productive. And I'll deal with pain or with fear or with grief or with other things at some other time again. So that's one thing that is very good if you can get into that and really try to find a way to deal with fear and negativity. And I think the better you are in pushing that away, the stronger you will be in focusing on the road and on what you do need to do to go ahead, to move ahead again.
You know something, I don't know if it's completely relevant to what we're talking about, but I thought it was important to share. Talking about your glider.
Okay.
I learned some years ago whilst I was traveling, I was very lucky because I got to speak to a pilot.
Right.
And we were just talking because we were all waiting for the plane and the pilots were waiting because the plane hadn't arrived.
Right.
And we were just talking. We were talking about, for some reason, I had it in my dark mind to talk about engines stalling. Oh, yes, that's right. I was reading about Malcolm Gladwell and Outliers, the book. And there's a section in there about Korean Airlines crashing.
Yes.
And we were talking about that just funnily. And he was saying that the thing is about a jumbo jet that people don't realize is that, if a jumbo jet's engine stalls, you think, well, this thing's flying at 500 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. It could just keep going. Mm-hmm. That just keep flying because it's got the uplift and so on. Mm-hmm. But if the engines stop, the thing just drops out of the air.
Yeah, because it loses speed and it needs a lot of speed to stay in the air. Right.
Exactly that. So I just wanted to share that. Dark moments, but there you go.
Yeah, it's about creating a routine to get out of disaster, basically, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. But going back to that thing, I don't know if I went through a phase years ago. I used to watch all those sort of survival programs, like Bear Grylls and people like that. And he used to talk about it, and it really made an impression upon me. Is that if you're in a sort of a survival situation, this again, it's about attention. If you're in a survival situation in the military, they train you. And rather than think, okay, a classic survival situation is somebody's cold, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're wet, they've for whatever reason, they've got wet and they're, that's where they're going to die of hypothermia. Right. Is they say in that situation, when you're cold, when you're tired, when you're a little bit shocked, adrenaline's going, all those kind of things, you're not making the right decisions.
Right.
So the key is not to make a decision. The key is just to follow through on a drill. And there is a drill, and if any of the listeners know it, please tell me, but it's like 4 things and they're in a specific order. Right? Your first thing should be fire.
Yes.
Right, that's the first thing you should build. You should build fire, and then it's fire, shelter, and food is the last one. Because you might be thinking, I'm cold, I've got to get something to eat, so you'll start looking for food, but then you'll die of cold looking for food, right? Or, I've got to build a shelter because it's raining. You've got to build the fire first, all those kind of things. So they have these 4 things, and it spells out a word, which I can't remember what it is. But, the point is about, when you're in those situations of panic or, things are going wrong, you have to have some kind of I don't know how you put this into the business context, but you have to have some kind of action plan where you're not really thinking, you're just doing, getting yourself out of this situation and digging yourself out, because otherwise if you focus on what you think is relevant right now, it might not be. That might be, like you say, the intuitive, getting hold of the steering wheel of the car or the glider, right? That might kill you.
Yes.
I don't know. How do you put that in a business context?
Well, I think it's good to train routines. And I think if you are able to create a routine to get negativity out of your life, focus on the positive, focus on moving forward, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Gratitude. Do you ever do that?
Definitely, yeah.
Does that help you?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does, but for me it's hard to ban worry with gratitude. I know that it should, but maybe I don't do it often enough. Maybe that's my... But it's hard to get worry out of my life just by being grateful for things.
Right. But I know you mentioned it as well before, that, we talked about hanging around with the right people. Maybe one of the things you need to do is expose yourself to unfortunate people as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, as an example, I've been reading just, it's one of those things, you know, I used to, like you and I both read a lot, right?
Yep.
And consume a lot of literature. And one of the things that I used to do is read a lot of business books. Mm-hmm. And I've stopped doing it during the, like before I go to bed. I used to read. I thought, okay, I'd read some business book, but it just puts my brain on fire. It's like I can't go to sleep now. So I've started reading. Since I watched Tim Ferriss's podcast, he says like he reads fiction at night. I'm not really into fiction, but what I do is I read stuff which is completely unrelated to my life or anything related to business. And I've been reading, it's just absolutely bizarre, but I've been reading, I'll just share with you about, it's so unrelated to everything. I've been reading about how the Irish were, we're talking about the 18th century and 17th century Irish peasants were exported to Barbados to work as slaves.
Right.
I've just been reading the history about that, right? And it's just so I can't find any sort of connection with my life in it, but that's kind of why I'm reading it. But the whole point about gratitude and so on is because I look at that and think, F&L, that was pretty damn bad back then.
Right.
And I think, as well, I've also been reading like Robert Fisk, who's like a famous journalist who covers a lot of like the Middle Eastern wars and stuff, and about like his adventures, so to speak, and his coverage of all the sort of last 20 years.
Right.
And just going into places like Iran and Iraq and stuff and talking about what he's seen. And I'm just thinking, wow. That, in a way, it's like gratitude. I'm thinking, wow, whatever happens to me, it ain't ever going to be as bad as that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
That's my gratitude.
Shall we be grateful for this hour spent together, Graham, and discussing? We had Graham did some preparation for the call today and for the Facebook Live by pulling up the articles. Thank you very much for bringing those up, Graham. I think the discussion went quite broad to survival, flying planes, and drifting cars, but I think it's I think there's some valuable lessons. What would we like? What we'd like to hear from the tribe on this particular topic of how would we say it? Yeah, focus and controlling your attention. Yeah, what would you like to find out from people in our tribe?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's think about that. Yeah, so basically today we shared stories, right?
Yes.
I think they should say, I mean, if they feel they could do it, share some stories of how they've controlled their attention in a positive way, because then that gives people an inspiration to do the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe focusing on the positive. So maybe we spoke a lot about, getting rid of negativity. What do you guys do to focus your attention? And how do you make sure that, you stay on the path of positive things, of growth, of moving forward? What kind of things do you do to make that happen in your life? I think that would be interesting to know.
Absolutely. Focus on the road, guys.
Focus on the road. Don't hit the wall. See you next time.
You've been listening to The Lazy Money Machine. Find out more at lazymoneymachine.com.